Salutations, respected viewers. I'm George from Ireland. And this video is going to be a post-mortem on President Trump's meeting with Kim Jong-un in Hanoi. So it's about a week ago that meeting came to an end in the Vietnamese capital, and Kim Jong-un was there, the chairman of the National Defense Committee of the People's Democratic Republic of Korea. What a mouthful that is, but everybody knows he's the tyrant who rules North Korea as his personal fiefdom, a man for whom Trump is filled with admiration. I know that he was Little Rocket Man a couple of years ago, but in recent times this has been fulsome praise from President Trump for perhaps the cruelest and most savage tyrant in the world. It is flabbergasting. Why on earth does the Republican Party not call him out on this? The Republican Party, which used to wish to spread democracy across the globe, as recently as the time of George W. Bush, which used to speak about human rights. I know its own record on this was mixed, but my God, it's an angel compared to Kim Jong-un, and on and on. It used to be patriotic, stand up for the national interest, firmly defend stalwart allies like South Korea. So why was Vietnam chosen? Well, a former American enemy with whom the United States now enjoys cordial relations. And Vietnam is a showcase of capitalism. If you're no longer hostile to us, if you allow our investment, then you'll all get a lot richer. So isn't that the way to go? So in that sense, it was an inspired choice. Where else would they meet? In that village on the border between the two. In North Korea, Americans would not feel unsafe there. In South Korea, Kim Jong-un might feel threatened by that. In China, China is North Korea's closest ally, so perhaps not. Or you always be so easily bugged by the Chinese and North Koreans if you meet on their territory. On a US warship, again, the North Koreans would feel they were losing face there. In the United States, or perhaps likewise, although that would be a bit of a triumph for North Korea, for Kim Jong-un to be invited there, and Trump might try that one later. So, to be fair to Trump, some groundwork had been laid by various underlings, like Mike Pompeo going to North Korea a few weeks ago, like Kim Jong-un's right-hand man going to Washington, D.C. So this preparatory negotiation should have made this one quite easy, simply signing off on a pre-agreed statement, but that didn't happen. So Trump, as usual, is signed by the seat of his pants. What Henry Kissinger said was that a head of state meeting ought to be the climax of the diplomatic process, not the beginning. And obviously with Trump in Singapore last year, that was step one, which was moronic. He just went completely against conventional wisdom. Now, Henry Kissinger, I know he's a highly tendentious figure, not someone for whom I have a great deal of time, but even his worst enemy wouldn't say he's an idiot. Even his implacable foes would have to admit he's a very seasoned and experienced diplomat. Well, he's been now about 96 years old. So Trump evinced his cavalier attitude once again. But anyone could have seen this coming a mile off, that they were not going to reach an agreement. And he was warned by his own intelligence agencies that North Korea was not disarming and never would do. And the North Koreans have obviously lied through their teeth on this issue since the 90s. They've played cat and mouse with the United States, the UN, everybody else. So there'll be periods of rising tension and détente. When they're really strangled by sanctions, then they will appear to play ball. There was some softening of language from Mike Pompeo a couple of weeks ago when he indicated that North Korea didn't need to totally disarm before sanctions would be lifted. So President Trump ended up walking away. There seemed to be a notable lack of acrimony. That at least was welcome. Now, the top brass in the United States are now pleased by this. They'd probably be aghast if Trump had suddenly said, all right, we're lifting sanctions, especially if lifting it completely, and the North Koreans will do this later. Trust me on this one, because I trust Kim Jong-un. They could have done this step by step. You denuclearized at this stage, we have our inspectors in to verify that, and in return, we will lift sanctions on whatever it is. They could have set deadlines, done this incrementally. But so there's been no progress and no deadlines have been set. There are no indicators to prove that North Korea has taken steps towards ridding itself of nuclear weapons. Way back in the WikiLeaks papers, when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, they thought that what would happen, that North Korea, if ever united with South Korea, would try and make it a Korean bomb shared with the United Korea. and that was that, which the Chinese wouldn't like either. So, okay, North Korea is a weapon that China can launch at the United States to some extent. It's also a problem for the West, for the United States, for South Korea, for Japan, not really Western countries, as the last two, that China can turn up or turn down, because 90% of North Korea's trade is via China. So Chinese wanted the situation sorted out. They don't want a nuclear war on their border. They don't want a conventional war in North Korea either. They don't want millions of North Koreans pouring into their country. They would like the situation to be satisfactorily resolved, North Korea to be a vassal state. Remember that until the 19th century, Korea had been a Chinese vassal for centuries, and the Chinese are very happy with that situation. And they don't want a mighty, united Korea as a US ally. They quite like the US troops in the Korean Peninsula withdrawn. So if the Chinese can get anything towards achieving these objectives, that will be very welcome in Beijing. So what they could have done, President Trump and Kim Jong-un, is to end the Korean War. You think, come on, that ended in 1953. But technically they're still at war with each other. And US troops are in South Korea, obviously the invitation of Seoul. But if you have ended the the Korean War, why are your troops in the Republic of Korea? They ought to withdraw. Well, obviously they could still stay at the behest of the South Korean government. That's that. Because occasionally, of course, there was firing across the border. So Trump doesn't appear to have held any consultations with South Korea or Japan or China. They're all interested parties in the region. So Kim may have felt that he was reasonable up to now, that he was establishing a rapport with his American analog. And they really are soulmates in terms of their style, their intolerance of criticism, their egomania, and their petulance and all the rest of it. But Kim Jong-un may now up the ante. Thought, well, if nice doesn't work, I have to be nasty. And it appears to be that's happening. It looks as though they're preparing to launch something. Now, it could be a satellite, but it could be a test missile. They've regularly fired them over to Japan just to prove they could do it. We could put a nuclear warhead on this if the Nipponese don't play nice. So Trump may have actually made the situation worse because, as I say, the North Koreans, having thought they were bending over backwards to be accommodating and they got nothing out of it, say, well, no more Mr. Nice Guy, we're going to have to do the opposite. We're going to have to start some saber rattling. And so we're back to where we were before. That diplomacy has failed. On the other hand, this is also a propaganda coup for the People's Democratic Republic of Korea. That's North Korea to most people, in that they got to have a face-to-face meeting with the US president twice now, even though President Trump is a dotant, as Pyongyang so memorably put it. So Trump has been left with egg in his face yet again. And when they talked about that American student who died in North Korean custody, it was jaw-dropping to hear President Trump take the side of the cruelest regime on earth against his own people. Yet again, he believed Kim Jong-un on this issue. North Korea, which has got perhaps the worst human rights record in the world, which has slavery. They don't actually call it slavery, but that's effectively what it is. And all these people making money for the leader to live in opulence and farmed out as slaves in China and all the rest of it. A savagely cruel regime with no freedom of expression whatsoever. People not even allowed to leave the country. They have to be trusted loyalists to be allowed out, and all the rest of it. And that is who Trump thinks is wonderful. And yet Trump then, of course, is very insultingly critical of the leaders of free countries, of Trudeau, of May, of other leaders like that, just because they don't dance to his tune. So there we are. What's going to happen next? That's anybody's guess. It could get worse. I don't know of any informed person who believes that North Korea is going to get rid of their nuclear arms. They think that's essential for regime survival. They know the United States would never dare attack them because they got nukes. And that puts them at the top table, one of about 10 countries in the world with nuclear arms. So why on earth would they give that up? What would the US have to offer them? I mean, just so much money. Well, obviously Kim Jong-un doesn't care about his people. Millions of his people starved to death in the 90s. Admittedly, he was a child then. But his family have no concern whatsoever for the well-being of their people. So that is not going to cut it. Anyway, if Trump thinks that the North Koreans are going to get rid of their nuclear weapons, he's got another thing coming. They may pretend to do so, they might go through the motions, but they'll obviously hide their nuclear arsenal.